graduate school and fully anticipated having a private practice that would cater to women in the queer community. I went to the VA to get some experience with what I consider the traditional men, because I thought they wouldn't respond well to my stimulus value. I think I'm visibly queer. I think most people would recognize that in me. And what I found is that it challenged a lot of the conceptions I had about the traditional man and the person in the military. And what I found is I can probably count on one hand in the last 10 years the number of times my stimulus value has been a problem. And mostly I've been embraced and really supported. And I think part of that is because people in the military have faced some life or death situations, and which I think brings a lot of perspective to like what's important versus what's not important, or what we're going to make a big deal out of. Right. And they've traveled more extensively than a lot of people in the civilian world, so they've seen a lot more, and they've seen people living in different ways. So I feel like that there's this more acceptance, honestly, than I expected to see. Not that there's not, what you would think of in terms of traditional masculinity and some of the things that go with that, but there's also some pockets of acceptance that I've been really pleased with. I got there in 2011 is when the LGBT program, the national program, started having postdocs where aspiring psychologists could go and study LGBT populations at the VA and work on developing more inclusive policy and practices. So I felt like when I got in there, there was big momentum. But I know that there was a lot of work that was going on before I got there to even get something like that going.
In terms of, let's first off, let's go ahead and talk about the academics that goes behind propelling the machine, if you will. The amount of research has really led to this shift in ideology, I guess, in helping rather than to be, don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
So in this current day, anyone who's in the military who's not been grandfathered, how do they get help as active duty before they decide that they're going to get out of the military, so to speak?
Things were getting better and better and better and with the Obama administration, and that there's been some pullback with that, like with recent administrations. Right. Like you said, there are some people that are grandfathered in. At the same time, reaching out for help right now, if you are a person who is not grandfathered in, or a person who would like to start actively transitioning while in the military, could result, at least from my understanding, in you being required to leave the military. And I know as a mental health professional, as a psychologist, if I work for the military, my primary client would be the military. It wouldn't be someone coming in to see me. And in terms of confidentiality is a little bit different there. So if a person wanted to have an active, long-term military career as things stands right now, and also wanted to transition, if they came and talked about that, I think that could potentially put their career at risk. It will vary a lot by VA. What I can say is that nationally, the VA has instituted policies so that every VA in the country has what they call a Veterans Care Coordinator, an LGBT Veterans Care Coordinator. And that person is the point of contact for all LGBTQ veterans, as well as primary care physicians, endocrinologists, people who work in prosthetics, go-to person to ask questions about what the VA does and does not do in support of transitioning. What I would expect is the first person that someone is normally set up with when they enter the VA is a primary care provider. So I would anticipate that their first meeting might be with a primary care provider, at which point they if they were willing to come out to their primary care provider and say what they're interested in terms of transitioning, the primary care provider would probably submit a consult to both mental health and to endocrinology, at which point I would probably be contacted, or another VCC would be contacted to do an assessment, basically to confirm the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, as it's now being called, and assure that the veteran is medically competent to make decisions regarding their health care, and not actively psychotic or something of that nature. So we would write some kind of letter after the assessment was complete in support of them moving forward with evaluation for hormones, at which point they could go to the endocrinologist and be evaluated physiologically for hormone therapy, to make sure everything was as it should be, so that they could safely pursue hormone replacement. I think the only thing that could impede someone's progress would be if they were ruled to be medically incompetent to make decisions, if they were actively psychotic, or if their physiology, I know for example there are some issues associated with high cholesterol and smoking that can sometimes have to be dealt with for a person to be healthy enough to start hormones, that could get in the way, but age has never been something that I've heard of that could impair that.
Okay. And the only reason I ask that is because there are long transition curves. There are those who start at an early age. There are those who start at a late age. And inside the VA, I've always wondered whether or not there's an age limitation on what kind of services are available.
And I would say the majority of people I've worked with, and this is only anecdotal, I don't have any kind of national statistics, is that it's an older population. Typically it's not people in their 20s, it's a lot of times people who have completed a full military career and you know, they've retired, they've been in the military 20 years, their kids have graduated school and those kinds of things, and they're now feeling like that they can give themselves the permission to live in a way that's congruent with their identity. So that's what I see more of than younger people coming and being like, this is who I am and I'm ready to move. Some VAs have more, depending on the size of the VA, depends on kind of what you're eligible for. So for example, I did my postdoc at the Albuquerque VA. And there we had a large enough LGBT population where we also could offer speech therapy. So we had a speech therapist that was there in-house where we could send our veterans to do that work with. At some of the more metropolitan VAs, there are primary care physicians who have completed the training and requirements that they could prescribe the hormones. So it wouldn't necessarily require a referral to endocrinology. In terms of mental health evaluation, so if you come to the El Paso VA and I do your mental health evaluation, my standards are that you have to be medically competent and you can't actively be psychotic. And I wouldn't say, for example, if somebody was experiencing major depression or had a personality disorder or something, that would concern me, like in terms of their psychological stability to move forward with treatment. So there can be some variations in that. That being said, there are national guidelines and there's a national program where we are encouraged to call in and contact and consult about cases and figure out what is going on that's the most updated and the latest thing that is suggested. Some VAs also have what they call a scan echo team that is made up of a pharmacist, a primary care physician, an endocrinologist, a psychologist, a social worker, and so there's a team that's designated specifically for transgender veterans. So that whole team is, it's all kind of in one place. We're not sending them from one service to the next. I mean, I can tell you, I did my internship at the Lexington, Kentucky VA. It's one of the VAs that has one.
Okay.
I'm sure that the Houston VA has one, because it's one of the major directors of LGBT policy nationwide for the VA and directives. There is Michael Koff. He's a psychologist, and he's kind of with another person. They're the kind of co-developers of the LGBT program. And the other person is and I don't know why I'm not able to remember her name right now, but she's at the Boston VA.
Okay.
So I'm sure those VAs would certainly. Big research centers like the Palo Alto VA, I'm sure would have one.
Okay.
That being said, there's probably a way to, that you could almost Google that or find that out. Well, it would depend. So it would depend on if we could meet the need or not, or if a VA close to us could meet the need.
Okay.
So, for example, we don't have a speech therapist at the El Paso VA that is skilled in providing that specific service to our transgender veterans. However, we can put in a referral to the community, and if there is someone in the community that can do it, we can refer them there, or even potentially have them do telehealth appointments with the speech therapist at the Albuquerque VA.
Okay.
So I doubt that there would be an approval for somebody to go get a scan echo team specifically.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, you could get the needs met through your Veterans Care Coordinator and the people they collaborate with,
Okay.
If that makes sense. So all of the services have to be available at every VA. It's not like some VAs can just forego and be like, well, we don't offer that here. So that's not an option.
Okay.
It has to be offered. There's a national mandate. And the newest one came out that we're providing even more services than we did in the past. So, for example, we are doing laser hair removal for pre-surgery, which is something that we weren't doing before. We're also doing prosthetics in terms of wigs, really good quality wigs and things of that nature, which is something that's newer, that we weren't necessarily providing before on a national level. Some VAs may have figured out a way to do it, but now it's nationally happening. Yes, very much so. Each VA around the country has been encouraged to participate in the Human Rights Campaign Health Equality Index, and it's part of the strategic mission. Basically what that is the Human Rights Campaign every year puts out these kind of goal markers for hospitals and things of that nature to accomplish to be considered a leader in LGBT health equality. And we're all encouraged as VCCs to work with other people at our facility to apply and achieve leadership status. And so, for example, this year, the VA in El Paso achieved leadership status for the first time. So we're considered a leader in LGBT healthcare equity. And many of the VAs around the country are. And so that's something that's very important. And part of the reason I see that growing, or I could see us growing in that way, is because each year the HRC, or every so often, increases the requirements. It used to just be that you had to meet 4 requirements. Now there are lots of requirements that require you to provide more and more services to the LGBTQ community and provide more and more of your people to be educated on addressing the healthcare needs of LGBTQ individuals. That also being said, some of the policies that were recently put in place in terms of what we are required to provide have an effective date until 2024. So they cannot be dialed back.
Okay.
That would be the first opportunity, if something was going to be dialed back for them to be. That being said, even in the current political climate, I would highly doubt that they would be, because of what the people running the program have been able to do, and just in terms of like when we started with the LGBT postdocs, there were like 3, and now there's like 24. Now they're very serious about each VA having a veterans care coordinator, and there's a certain amount of time that each VA is required to give us just to work specifically on connecting with the LGBT community and things of that nature. And so I feel like all signs are pointing towards more and more like growth and good things for our LGBTQ veterans. That's not to say that they're going to feel completely welcome when they walk into the VA.
Okay.
We have policies. That doesn't mean that prevents people from not doing what they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not done, that LGBTQ veterans have recourse. They can contact their VCC, and then that's me or whoever it is at their VA, and then we can take steps to correct or change whatever the behavior is, if that makes sense.
Okay, so how does that change, and how does a person in transition, right now, whether they're active duty or veteran, how do they handle something like that in terms of I need to be treated, as a human being?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of steps do they need to do in order to be able to get that?
A lot of the experience varied by the openness of the person who was next in command, in charge of them. And if that was a supportive person, then that was a good thing. A lot of people also talked about like kind of having to earn their place. So like if they had done really incredible work and had this chance to like show who they were and things of that nature, and be sent out with the same people that they demonstrated that work ethic and things with, that they would have a much more supportive experience.
Right.
But sometimes that wasn't the case. And so if people were sent out with people that they hadn't formed those bonds with, they would have a harder time like during deployment or things of that nature. But what I did see from the camouflage closet is that the LGBT community, whether supported on a like national level or just within the small communities that developed, were very resilient. And while there was obvious struggle, and well, they obviously need the support of national guidelines and figureheads and things of that nature, many of them found a way to make their military experience as positive as it could be. But for many people, it cost them their military careers and had really dire consequences. Particularly, well, I wouldn't say that. I think Don't Ask, Don't Tell was like put in to try to be a useful thing, and it ended up not being quite as useful as they thought it was going to be. But at least with that national support, people had recourse. Before then, I know lots of people lost their careers, and it's been a very stressful and traumatic experience for them that we've had to work on in therapy to try to talk about and deal with the unfairness of it and things of that nature. I would say I see more trauma in the LGBT community than in the non-LGBTQ community. In my experience, and again, it's just my experience, I don't necessarily have any national numbers to back this up, that I've seen people who are perceived as LGBTQ to be more likely to experience what we call military sexual trauma, and to experience bullying, to experience physical assault, those kinds of things. And so they come in with those experiences and the symptoms that are part of that experience. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's anxiety disorders or depressive disorders. I would say it's trauma and stressor related disorders that I see the most of in terms of disproportionality. For our veterans, I would say find your LGBT Veterans Care Coordinator and get in touch with them. Every facility has one, and you should be able to find it on their website. And once you get in that contact with that person, they'll be able to help you navigate kind of the bureaucracy to get what your needs are met, and that there is help there. And if they encounter a situation that is negative, to not give up, because there is national policy and there are people there that can help. It may take them trying a few times to get to that person, but we've got lots that we can offer, and to please seek it out.
Really appreciate you coming by and sharing words of wisdom for everyone watching. Thank you so much.
No problem. No problem.